You're listening to Stories at Audiobook Sleep, where your IQ will always be respected. Hope you enjoy listening to the story. The evening is quiet, calm, the kind of silence that tempts you to believe nothing could possibly go wrong. Outside, the sky has melted into violet shadows, and the street lamps hum like tired bees. You are in your chair, halfway through convincing yourself you deserve another cookie, when it happens. A knock. Not the polite, rhythm-tapping knock of a courier, or the desperate hammering of someone fleeing danger. No, this knock is oddly hesitant, like whoever is on the other side of your door rehearsed it in their head and still wasn't confident. Here's the bold part. You probably won't survive this. Not because you're in mortal peril, though let's be real, inviting strangers into your home has been the beginning of many horror films. But because once the goblins next door knock, your life is doomed to change. Permanently. You freeze. The last time you interacted with your neighbors was, well, never. You'd heard whispers, mutters, the occasional warning not to make eye contact with the little folk in the crooked house. You've passed them on the street, catching a flash of greenish skin or oddly tailored trousers, but you've never exchanged words. And now, somehow, they're at your front door. The knock comes again, softer this time, almost apologetic. Against all good instincts, instincts that scream, stay seated, pretend you're not home, invent an emergency dentist appointment. You rise. The floor creaks under your feet as though conspiring against your attempt at stealth. You open the door, and there they are. Two goblins, standing shoulder to shoulder, both holding a chipped mixing bowl between them, like it's the most precious relic on earth. They blink up at you with wide golden eyes. Their expressions are caught somewhere between shame and hope. "Evening," says one, voice rasping like a broom dragged over stone. "Sorry to bother, but we were wondering if you might have some sugar we could borrow." You blink, words scrambling. Of all the scenarios, angry demands, magical threats, eldritch oaths, you did not expect sugar. They glance at each other, then back at you. The bowl tilts precariously in their hands as if proof they didn't come empty. It is one of those moments where reality shuffles sideways, just a hair, like a rug tugged under your feet. Goblins, your neighbors, borrowing sugar. You realize with a faint pang of guilt you've been standing silently far too long. "Sugar," you repeat, eloquence abandoning you. "Yes, please," says the other goblin. His ears twitch nervously. "Just a cup or two. Promise we'll return it." The street is quiet behind them. The kind of quiet that feels staged, like every other neighbor is peeking through their curtains, betting how long you'll survive this interaction. Your mouth finds words again. "Sure. Yeah, I've got sugar." The relief on their faces is immediate, glowing, almost childlike. They shuffle their feet, still hovering on the doorstep, clearly waiting for permission to enter. You hesitate. Do you let goblins into your house? Is this the kind of life choice that defines you forever? Well, considering they're holding a mixing bowl like it's a peace treaty, it feels cruel to make them stand out there. "Come in," you say, with the confidence of someone who will absolutely regret it later. They beam. Not metaphorically, literally beam. Their teeth glint sharp and too many, but the joy in their eyes is disarming enough that you step aside anyway. They enter cautiously, as if your hallway were lined with hidden traps. Their feet make soft scraping sounds on the doormat, and you can't help but notice their boots, hand-stitched leather, patched a dozen times, toes curled upward in an almost comical point. One goblin sniffs the air and murmurs, "Smells like biscuits." That's when you realize they can smell the cookie jar you left open in the kitchen. Great. Now you're not just a neighbor, you're a snack dispenser in training. You lead them into the kitchen, your pulse strangely quick. Every detail feels absurdly magnified. The way they huddle together, the way their bowl clinks softly against your counter, the way their eyes track every movement you make as you reach for the sugar canister. As you scoop the white crystals into their bowl, one of them whispers, "Blessings on your cupboards." You almost laugh because, really, that sounds like something your grandmother would mutter after too much sherry. But the sincerity in his tone halts you. These goblins aren't mocking, they mean it. The sugar pours in, a soft hiss against porcelain. The bowl fills halfway. "That's enough," says one, quickly, placing a gnarled hand over yours. His skin is cool, calloused, the nails long but clean. You pause. The sugar trembles faintly in your hand. Repay? What exactly do goblins consider repayment? The question lodges in your mind as they clutch the bowl together again, smiling with sharp, sincere gratitude. "Thank you," they chorus, and before you can muster a clever response, they shuffle toward the door, muttering apologies for intruding, their steps quick and careful. The door closes behind them, leaving you in silence again, sugar canister still open on the counter. It feels like nothing happened, like maybe you imagined it, except, of course, for the faint sprinkle of sugar they left trailing across your doormat, tiny white crystals glimmering like starlight. And you know, deep down, this is only the beginning. The sugar trail glimmers faintly under your porch light, a breadcrumb path leading back to the crooked little house at the end of the row. You stand there longer than you should, hands still resting on the doorframe, as if the night might whisper some explanation. But no, the silence swallows it whole, leaving only the faint buzz of a moth throwing itself repeatedly at the light bulb. You return inside, shut the door, and lean against it with the exaggerated sigh of someone who has just hosted the strangest tea party in history. A rational part of your brain insists this was nothing, just neighbors, weird neighbors, asking for sugar, normal, harmless. But then again, normal neighbors don't beam at you with too many teeth, or bless your cupboards as if your spice rack were an altar. You wander back to the kitchen, trying not to imagine those sharp smiles. The sugar canister sits open, looking oddly vulnerable. You close it with more force than necessary, as though sealing away a secret. That should be the end of it, right? Except you can still smell them. Not in a bad way. The air lingers with a scent you can't quite place, something like burnt cinnamon mixed with damp moss. It clings to your sweater, to the curtains near the door. It's not unpleasant, but it's unmistakably goblin. You wrinkle your nose and laugh softly to yourself. Imagine explaining that to your coworkers. "Oh, sorry I'm late. I got ambushed by neighbors who smell like spiced mulch." You busy yourself with dishes, trying to anchor back to reality, but every clink of ceramic feels amplified, every shadow in the corner a little more suspicious. You tell yourself you're not waiting for another knock. Definitely not. But then, there it is, a soft tap-tap against the door. You freeze, sponge in hand, heart thudding. Surely not again. They've only just left. How much sugar can one household possibly consume? You tiptoe to the door and press an ear against it. Nothing, just stillness. You almost convince yourself you imagined it when a polite little cough escapes from the other side. Of course. You open the door a crack. One of the goblins, the shorter one with the twitching ears, stands there, bowl tucked under his arm. He shuffles his feet, eyes darting nervously to the neighbors' windows as though worried about being seen. "Sorry," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "We forgot to say thank you properly." Before you can respond, he thrusts something into your hand. A button. A large, old-fashioned brass button, worn smooth from years of use. He explains, "For you," ears wiggling in what you assume is sincerity. "Payment." You stare at it. A button. Not even a shiny one. The absurdity is so sharp you almost laugh. But then you notice how seriously he's watching you, waiting for your acceptance. You swallow, nod solemnly, and say, "Thank you. Very generous." The goblin beams, relief flooding his sharp features. "Good, good neighbor." Then, before you can clarify that a button does not, in fact, cover the rising cost of groceries, he scampers away, disappearing into the crooked house like a shadow sucked back into darkness. You close the door, this time locking it out of sheer instinct. The button glints in your palm, heavier than it should be. It radiates a faint warmth, as if it's been sitting in the sun. You set it on the counter beside the sugar canister, shaking your head. The night drifts on. Later, curled under your blanket, you hear them again, not knocking this time. Their voices drift faintly through the walls, muffled chatter, the occasional burst of laughter that sounds like a squeaky hinge. You wonder what they're doing with the sugar, baking, brewing, conducting some midnight chemistry experiment? Sleep slips away slowly like a cat unwilling to leave your lap. When you finally drift off, it's to the faint smell of burnt cinnamon curling through the dark like an uninvited lullaby. And in the morning, when you stumble bleary-eyed into the kitchen, the button is gone. Not misplaced, not rolled under the counter. Gone. Only a faint ring of sugar dust remains where it sat, sparkling in the morning light like frost. You lean against the counter, wubbing your eyes, and mutter, "Yeah, totally normal neighbors."
Morning never feels quite safe after a night like that. The sunlight streams through your blinds in smug little stripes, pretending nothing unusual happened. Birds chirp outside, too cheerful, as if mocking the fact that you spent the night listening to goblins argue through thin walls about who licked the spoon first. You stretch, stumble toward the kitchen, and nearly trip over your own paranoia. The counter is exactly how you left it, minus the brass button, which has vanished as if it simply blinked out of existence. In its place, a faint swirl of sugar dust, spiraling like someone traced a finger in it. You stare at it longer than is reasonable, then brush it away with a rag, pretending that solves the problem. Coffee. You need coffee. The kettle hisses to life, and you busy yourself with the ritual. Grounds, filter, mug, clinging to the ordinary like a life raft. Except ordinary has a way of sneaking out the back door when goblins move in next door. By the time you've downed half a cup, there's another knock. Of course. You set the mug down with exaggerated patience and march to the door, muttering, "This is why people buy apartments." You open it, and there they are again, the goblin duo. Same bowl, now scrubbed so clean it gleams, which you find suspicious. Goblins don't seem like the dish soap and sponge kind of folk. They clutch it together like last night, their eyes bright, their ears twitching with anticipation. "Good morning," says the taller one, far too enthusiastic for someone with claws. "We're here for diplomacy." You blink. "Diplomacy?" "Yes," he says, nodding gravely. "Over sugar." And just like that, you're apparently hosting a summit in your kitchen. They shuffle in without waiting for permission this time, placing the bowl ceremoniously on your counter. The shorter goblin produces 2 chipped teacups from inside his coat, like a magician pulling rabbits. He sets them down with a flourish, then looks at you expectantly. It dawns on you. They didn't come for sugar this time. They came for company. You sigh, resigned, and fetch the sugar canister. As you measure spoonfuls into their cups, you notice how reverently they watch the crystals fall, as if sugar were sacred. They stir the empty cups with tiny spoons, even though there's no tea, only sugar. Then, as on a cue, They both tap their spoons against the rims. Once, twice, 3 times. You raise an eyebrow. That a ritual? Etiquette, says the shorter one. To stir is to honor. To tap is to bind. Bind what, you ask, half expecting them to say your eternal soul. Hospitality, the taller goblin replies, completely serious. It means we are friends until the last grain dissolves. You chuckle nervously, because that's the sort of line cult leaders say before asking for your social security number. Still, you clink your own spoon against the counter in solidarity, hoping that counts. They grin, those sharp, too-many-teeth grins, but it feels less menacing this time, almost warm. Humans, the taller goblin muses between exaggerated sips of sugar, always think goblins bite first. Never true. Goblins share first. You nod, trying not to imagine what else they share besides cavities. As the sugar diplomacy drags on, conversation wanders. They ask about your work, your hobbies, your shoe size for some reason you don't dare question. You find yourself relaxing in their company, lulled by their odd rhythm of speech and the way their ears twitch like punctuation marks. But then, the shorter one leans in, lowering his voice. Careful, though. Not everyone likes humans being very friendly. You pause mid-sip. Not everyone? He gestures vaguely toward their crooked house. Family. Elders. They prefer sugar stays on our side. Less complicated. Your brain does the math. You gave them sugar, they gave you a button, and now you're knee-deep in goblin politics without realizing it. The taller goblin slams his cup down with a grin. But we like complicated. Complicated tastes sweet. You chuckle despite yourself, because who says things like that except goblins who treat pantry staples like sacred relics? Eventually, they rise, bow awkwardly, and shuffle out, leaving their empty cups behind like trophies of a strange victory. When the door closes, you're left staring at the chipped porcelain, the faint sugar crust at the bottom, and the absurd realization you've just conducted international relations with creatures who think teaspoons are treaties. And you know it's only going to get stranger. The cups stay on your counter like forgotten chess pieces. You tell yourself you'll wash them later, but for some reason you hesitate. It feels almost disrespectful to scrub away the sugar crust left by what they called binding. You mutter, "I'm not superstitious," but your hand hovers over the sponge anyway before retreating. Better safe than cursed. The day drags on, work emails and dull tasks fighting for your attention. Yet, no matter how many spreadsheets you open, your mind drifts back to goblins and spoons. By evening, you've half convinced yourself it was just a fever dream wrought on by stale cookies. Then the knock comes. You roll your eyes so hard it could qualify as cardio. Of course, you mutter, dragging yourself to the door. This time, when you open it, only one goblin stands there, the shorter one with the nervous ears. He looks unusually serious, like a salesman about to deliver the pitch of his life. In his hands, a spoon. Not a plain metal spoon, but one carved from bone, polished to a gleam, with odd little runes etched along the handle. "For you," he says, pressing it into your palm. "So you know the rules." You squint at the spoon. "Rules?" "Yes." He clears his throat, then straightens his posture like a teacher about to recite a lesson. 3 taps before sipping, always clockwise stirring, never stir someone else's cup unless invited, and, he pauses dramatically, ears twitching, never spill sugar on purpose. You stare. "That's it?" He nods gravely. "Very serious." You want to laugh, but his solemn expression keeps you in check. Instead, you twirl the spoon between your fingers, noting how oddly comfortable it feels, like it belongs there. The goblin beams when you slip it into your cutlery jar. "Good neighbor," he mutters, then scurries off before you can ask follow-up questions. You're left standing there, spoon rules rattling in your brain. Stir clockwise, 3 taps, no spilling. It feels ridiculous, and yet you catch yourself following the steps later when making tea. You stir clockwise, tap 3 times, and feel strangely reassured. That night, another visit, both goblins again. They knock, enter, and immediately launch into what can only be described as an etiquette lesson. Humans sit wrong, the taller one announces, pulling out a chair and demonstrating an exaggerated posture with knees bent inward and hands flat on the table. Like this, polite, not like this, he adds, mimicking your usual slouch. You snort. That looks like scoliosis, not manners. Respect, he insists, wagging a clawed finger. Respect for sugar, respect for neighbors, respect for spoons. They spend half an hour teaching you their customs, clinking cups twice before drinking, sniffing steam before sipping, whispering a tiny rhyme, something about sweet crystals and steady hands before swallowing. You can't decide if this is genuine cultural tradition or an elaborate prank. Still, you play along, because the way their eyes shine when you mimic them feels worth it, and surprisingly, you enjoy it. The rituals slow you down, force you to notice the swirl of sugar dissolving, the curl of steam, the sound of spoon against porcelain. It's absurdly calming. At one point, the shorter goblin leans close, whispering, "If you do it wrong, sugar spirits get cranky." You laugh, thinking he's joking, but his deadpan expression makes you pause. He's either a master comedian or genuinely believes sugar comes with an afterlife customer service department. The etiquette lesson ends with them bowing low, muttering blessings for your cupboards again. When they leave, you feel oddly lighter, like the world has tilted a little and you're starting to enjoy the imbalance. Later, brushing your teeth, you catch yourself tapping the toothbrush 3 times against the sink before using it. Out of habit, out of superstition, or maybe because deep down, you're starting to believe in goblin etiquette. And if that doesn't worry you, it probably should.
The next morning, you shuffle into the kitchen with hair like a haystack and eyes glued halfway shut. You make coffee, carefully following the goblin etiquette. Clockwise stir, 3 taps, no spilling, because apparently you're already indoctrinated. The sugar dissolves with a tiny hiss, and for reasons you don't want to examine too closely, it makes you feel safe. Cup in hand, you flop into a chair and scroll through your phone. That's when you notice it. The neighborhood chat group lighten up. Someone has started yet another thread titled "Strange Noises on Elm Street." The comments tumble in fast. Heard clattering again last night, like someone hammering pots together. Saw green shadows moving near the crooked house. Told you they were trouble. Why hasn't anyone called the council yet? You sigh. Humans love rumors the way cats love boxes. You scroll further, recognizing the usual suspects. Mrs. Henderson swearing she saw smoke coming from the goblin chimney. Mr. Davis complaining about his missing garden gnome, which, to be fair, looks suspiciously goblin-sized. You hover over the reply button, tempted to type, "They're just neighbors who like sugar." But you stop, because really, who would believe that? Instead, you sip your coffee, letting the bittersweet taste anchor you. By midday, you can't ignore it anymore. The whispers aren't just online. At the bakery, you overhear 2 women muttering about goblins buying flour in bulk. At the bus stop, a man shakes his head, warning his son to stay away from those little monsters. It's like everyone has a story, but none of them sound firsthand. All secondhand exaggerations passed along until the goblins might as well be running a criminal sugar cartel. You start thinking back. What do you actually know about them? They knock politely. They bring bowls. They pay in buttons, sure, but at least they pay. They smell faintly like burnt cinnamon, not brimstone. Honestly, that's more than you can say for some human neighbors. That evening, as you water your plants, the taller goblin wanders over, hands shoved awkwardly into patched pockets. His ears twitch when he notices the humans across the street glaring at him. He lowers his voice. "They don't like us," he mutters almost to himself. You glance up from the watering can. "They don't know you." "Same thing," he says, kicking a pebble. "No one makes it worse." There's a weight in his tone that surprises you, something heavier than sugar or spoons. You want to say the right thing, but your tongue trips. Instead, you offer the lamest comfort possible. "Well, I think you're fine." His golden eyes flicker, and for a second, he looks almost touched. Then he straightens, clears his throat, and says, "You should come over sometime for stew. Stew solves things." Before you can reply, he scurries back toward the crooked house, leaving you with the uncomfortable realization that you've just been invited into the heart of the rumor mill. That night, lying in bed, you hear voices again through the thin walls. Goblin voices, yes, but also something else, sharper, older, like gravel grinding. You can't make out the words, only the tone, disapproval. The goblins laugh nervously in reply, trying to sound light, but beneath it, there's tension. The kind of tension that tells you the gossip outside is nothing compared to what's brewing inside their crooked walls. You roll over, pull the blanket tighter, and whisper to yourself, "All this over sugar?" But you already know, it's not just sugar anymore.
The invitation lingers in your mind all day, like a note half scribbled on the edge of your thoughts. Come over for stew. Who even invites someone over for stew anymore? Pizza, sure. Barbecue, maybe. But stew has the kind of gravity that suggests secrets are involved. You spend the morning debating. Do you risk it, or do you pretend you didn't hear? By afternoon, your curiosity wins. Of course it does. You're human, and humans are biologically incapable of leaving mysteries alone. You knock on their crooked door, half expecting no answer. Instead, it creaks open almost instantly, as if they'd been waiting. The shorter goblin beams, ears twitching wildly. "You came! Stew's ready!" The taller one ushers you inside, and the smell hits immediately. Rich, spicy, sweet in a way that reminds you of cinnamon toast left too long on the burner. The kitchen is cluttered with pots, herbs hanging from the rafters, and an alarming number of sugar jars stacked in gregarious towers. You're guided to a rickety wooden table. The goblins fuss with bowls, ladling out thick stew that looks suspiciously green but smells oddly comforting. They sit across from you, expectant, like parents watching a toddler try vegetables for the first time. You take a cautious sip. It's surprisingly good, savory, earthy, with a sweetness that hums in the background. You blink in genuine surprise. This is delicious. The goblins relax instantly, both exhaling as if you just passed a sacred test. "Sugar," the taller one explains, tapping the edge of his bowl. "Not just for tea, not just sweet. Sugar keeps stew alive." You pause mid-bite. "Alive?" He grins, sharp teeth flashing. "Not breathing. Alive like spirit, memory, warmth. Without sugar, stew is just water and roots." The shorter goblin nods solemnly. "Sugar makes things remember they are meant to be eaten." You stare into your bowl, wondering if you should be concerned, but the taste lingers, comforting despite the ominous explanation. As the meal continues, conversation loosens. They ask about your life, your family, your favorite holidays. In return, they share pieces of their own story. Their house, they explain, isn't just crooked, it's old, older than the street itself. Their people have always lived here, long before the humans arrived with their tidy gardens and zoning laws. "Used to be plenty of sugar," the taller goblin says, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Traded fair, shared fair, but humans forgot us. Then they feared us. Now they whisper instead of knock. The shorter one fiddles with his spoon, adding softly, and cupboards grow colder when neighbors forget. You feel the weight of their words settle in your chest. For all the rumors and whispers, for all the golden eyes and sharp teeth, they don't sound like monsters. They sound like anyone else, lonely, left out, desperate to hold on to what little warmth they have. Why sugar, though, you ask finally? Why not gold or bread or, I don't know, canned soup? The goblins exchange a glance, silent communication passing between them. Then the taller one leans in, voice lowered. Because sugar remembers joy. Birthdays, weddings, first kisses in bakeries, midnight cocoa after snow. Humans don't notice, but sugar holds those moments. We borrow them. You blink, floored. Borrow joy, borrow sweetness, borrow the small sparks that make life worth living? Your spoon pauses in the stew. So when you asked for sugar, we asked for more than sugar, the shorter goblin finishes, eyes wide and earnest. The room falls into a hush. Only the bubbling pot on the stove fills the silence. You want to argue, to say sugar is just sugar, but deep down, you know better. You remember the way that first borrowed spoonful shimmered in their bowl, how their faces lit like lanterns. And suddenly, the weight of the gossip outside, the stares, the rumors, it all feels heavier. Because it's not just sugar your neighbors are borrowing, it's hope. You set your spoon down gently. Then I guess I'll have to keep my cupboard stocked. Their smiles spread slowly, grateful and fierce, like a pact sealed without words.
The stew sits warm in your belly long after you've left their crooked house. You walk home with a strange new awareness, as if the air itself tastes faintly sweeter. Or maybe that's just your imagination working overtime. Either way, you can't deny it. Dinner with goblins has changed something. You don't have long to process before the next knock comes. This time it's midday and you're knee-deep in laundry. You open the door to find both goblins again, bowl in hand, their faces unusually solemn. "Repayment," the taller one says, holding out the bowl. Inside, 3 marbles, 1 bent nail, and a feather that looks suspiciously like it came from a crow with mange. You blink. What is this? "Goblin currency," the shorter one explains with pride. "Valuable, very valuable." You stare into the bowl. The marbles clink softly, as though trying to back up his claim. "Look, I appreciate the thought, but sugar isn't exactly rare. You don't have to." "We must repay," the taller goblin interrupts, ears flattening. "To take without return is theft. To return wrongly is insult. To return truly, that is friendship." The words land heavier than you expect. Their insistence isn't about economics. It's about honor, culture, something that ties them together like the spoon rituals and cupboard blessings. You sigh, take the bowl and say, "Thank you." The relief on their faces is immediate, almost blinding. The shorter one claps his hands together. "Good neighbor, good trade." And that's how you end up with 3 marbles, a bent nail, and a feather that's sitting on your coffee table, mocking every rational part of your brain. Over the next few days, the goblin currency grows. Each time you lend sugar, or sometimes just let them use your kettle, they leave something behind. A rusted key, a smooth river stone, a broken watch that still ticks faintly, even though the glass is cracked. Your apartment begins to resemble a dragon's hoard curated by a toddler. At first, it's ridiculous. Then, it isn't. Because odd things start happening. The bent nail you toss in a drawer, it keeps finding its way back to the coffee table. The cracked watch ticks louder when the goblins are near. And the marbles, well, one morning, you swear they glow faintly in the dark like tiny bottled moons. You stop questioning. Some things are easier to accept when you don't poke them too hard. The neighbors, however, are another story. Mrs. Henderson corners you outside the mailbox, lips pinched. "You've been letting them in," she accuses, eyes narrowing. "I've seen the lights at night." You shrug. "They're just borrowing sugar." That's how it starts. Next thing you know, your cat disappears or your roof caves in. Mark my words, nothing good comes from goblins. You want to argue, but her glare dares you to try. So you mutter something non-committal and retreat, clutching your junk mail like a shield. Back inside, the goblin gifts wait for you. The watch ticks, the marbles gleam. The feather shivers as though caught in an invisible draft. You stop questioning. Some things are easier to accept when you don't poke them too hard. Later that night, as you're drifting off to sleep, you hear faint footsteps outside your door. A soft tap-tap follows, 3 taps, like a spoon against porcelain. You smile in the dark, realizing the goblins have folded you into their rituals, their currency, their odd little world. And you can't help but wonder, maybe the real debt isn't theirs at all. Maybe it's yours, forever thinking they were just monsters in a crooked house.
The nights grow louder. At first, it's just a few clinks of metal, the occasional muffled thud from the crooked house. You tell yourself it's nothing more than kitchen chaos, goblins dropping spoons or knocking over sugar jars. But then the sounds multiply. They're scurrying across floorboards, scraping against stone, the eerie creak of something heavy being dragged. One night you're sure you hear singing. Not the tuneful kind, but low and guttural like a broken accordion learning to hum. It rises, falls, and then cuts off suddenly, leaving the silence too sharp. Sleep becomes a negotiation. You bury your head under pillows, count backwards from 100, try calming apps. None of it works. The noises slip under your door like uninvited smoke. Finally, you can't stand it. You press your ear to the shared wall, heart thumping, and catch fragments of their voices. More sugar. No, not enough. Too soon. Elders won't wait. You jerk back, pulse quickening. Elders. You picture towering, wrinkled goblins with spoons like scepters glaring at your house for daring to lend sugar without permission. The next day, your paranoia turns to obsession. Every creak in your floorboards feels like an echo of theirs. Every flicker of your light bulbs make you wonder if goblin rituals are bleeding through the walls. You start noticing details you'd ignored before, the faint soot stains around their chimney, the sugar dust footprints near your doorstep, the way their curtains never quite close at night. And then, at 2 in the morning, you hear it. A clatter so loud you sit upright in bed, followed by a muffled cheer, then frantic shushing. That's it. Curiosity wins. You throw on a sweater and creep to your window. Their crooked house glows faintly as if lit from within by fireflies. Shadows move across the curtains, small, sharp, busy. One shadow lifts what looks suspiciously like a ladle in triumph. Your rational brain insists you should go back to bed, but another part of you, the part already halfway entangled in spoon rituals and goblin currency, presses your forehead to the glass and whispers, "What are you doing in there?" The answer comes sooner than expected. The next evening, as you're hauling groceries inside, the shorter goblin appears on your porch. He's jittery, eyes darting.
Sorry for noise. Very important work. Very important. You raise an eyebrow. Work that requires singing at 2 in the morning? His ears twitch. Tradition. Must be done at night. Sugar listens better then. You almost laugh, but his earnest expression stops you. He's not joking. Whatever they're doing, it's deadly serious, to them at least. The taller goblin joins him, lugging a bag that clinks ominously. We'll try quieter, but neighbors won't understand. They never do. You glance around, imagining Mrs. Henderson with binoculars behind her curtains. She probably thinks you're conspiring already. Look, I say carefully, I don't mind the noise. I want to know what's going on. The goblins exchange a look. Then in unison, they shake their heads. Not yet, too soon. And with that, they scurry off, leaving you holding groceries and 1,000 unanswered questions. That night, the sounds return, clinks, scrapes, faint chants. But instead of annoyance, you feel something else. Anticipation. Whatever they're doing, it's building towards something. And you're starting to suspect sugar is only the surface layer of a much deeper recipe.
You tell yourself you'll ignore it, that you'll let the goblins handle their business and focus on your own life. But the more you try to tune out the noises, the louder they seem. And not just loud in volume, loud in presence, like they're aimed at you, personally. The turning point comes when you open your pantry one morning and discover a spoon that doesn't belong to you. It's squat, tarnished, with a handle carved into a spiral. You definitely didn't buy it, and unless you've been sleep shopping antique kitchenware, there's only one explanation. You march next door, spoon in hand. The shorter goblin opens the door and blinks. "Ooh, gift delivered itself already." "Gift?" you demand. "Yes, yes, spoon chooses neighbor. Very rare, very lucky." You glance down at the twisted little utensil. It doesn't feel lucky. It feels heavier than it should. "Why did it end up in my pantry?" you ask. The taller goblin leans over his companion's shoulder. "Because the work is close to ready. Spoon knows who to trust." Your stomach does an unpleasant somersault. "Okay, time out. What exactly are you two doing?" They hesitate. The shorter one fiddles with his ears, then sighs. "We're preparing for the elders' visit. Big meeting. Big sugar." You blink. "Big sugar?" He nods solemnly. "Elders judge us on offerings. Sweetness means strength. Sweetness means survival. Without sugar, we lose standing. We lose place." Pieces fall together. The borrowing, the odd chants, the clinking in the night, it's all part of some grand preparation. Your sugar isn't just fueling midnight snacks, it's fueling politics. "But why involve me?" you ask. The taller goblin shrugs. "House is connected, walls thin, sweetness travels. You are part now." You gape. "Part? I didn't sign up for this." The shorter goblin's grin is sharp. "Too late. Spoon chose." Back in your apartment, you set the twisted spoon on the table and stare at it. It catches the light strangely, as if bending it inward. You touch it once, twice, half expecting it to wriggle. Nothing happens. Still, you can't shake the feeling that the spoon really did choose you, that somehow the goblins aren't entirely wrong. That night, the noises intensify. You hear a rhythm, almost like drumming, only it's spoons tapping bowls in perfect sync. The chanting grows clearer. "Sugar bind, sugar bless, sugar guard our crookedness." Your hairs on your arms rise. You imagine a circle of goblins, spoons raised like torches, marbles glowing in the dark. Sleep eludes you again. You clutch the spiral-handled spoon like a talisman, listening until the noises fade at dawn. And though your rational brain whispers that you're in over your head, another part of you, the part now holding goblin silverware, wonders what it would be like to see the ritual for yourself.
Morning sunlight creeps across your floor, but you feel anything but refreshed. The twisted spoon lies where you left it, glinting like it knows secrets. You prod it with a fingertip, half expecting it to leap up and demand breakfast. Instead, it sits there, smugly inanimate. You go about your day, laundry, dishes, answering emails, but the spoon keeps tugging at your attention. By noon, you're so distracted, you nearly pour salt instead of sugar into your coffee. That's when the knock comes. It's the taller goblin, his ears drooping in a way that screams urgency. "Tonight," he says without preamble, "you come. Elders allow it. Spoon chose." You blink. Wait, tonight? As in, I'm actually invited? He nods solemnly. Not just invited, needed. Sweetness must be balanced. You hold peace of balance. Your rational side screams to refuse. You should say no. Double lock your door and maybe move apartments entirely. But another part of you, the one that's already been dragged into spoon rituals and goblin economics, leans in. "What do I wear?" you ask, half joking. The goblin considers. "Something washable. Sugar stains." He disappears before you can ask for clarification. All day, anticipation buzzes through you. You picture yourself in some underground sugar temple, goblins in ceremonial aprons, chanting around cauldrons of syrup. You laugh at the absurdity, but when night falls and the knock comes again, your pulse skips. The shorter goblin leads you down a hallway that smells of cinnamon and damp stone. Their crooked house stretches deeper than you imagined. What looked like a cramped shack from the outside is a labyrinth inside, all tilted beams and slanting staircases. Finally, you reach a wide chamber, lit by dozens of candles balanced precariously in jars. In the center stands a table covered in sugar, piles, mounds, glittering hills of it. The smell is overwhelming, sweet enough to make your teeth ache just by breathing. Around the table sit 6 figures, smaller than the goblins you know, but older, hunched, their skin folded like wrinkled parchment. Each clutches a spoon like a staff, their eyes black and unblinking, turned toward you. The taller goblin whispers, "The elders." You swallow hard and give a weak wave. Hi." One elder taps her spoon against the sugar, the sound sharp as a gavel. The neighbor comes, the spoon chose, the balance tilts. The others murmur, voices rasping like wind over gravel. Then silence. You realize they're waiting for you. The shorter goblin nudges you forward. "Place your spoon," he hisses. With trembling hands, you set the spiral-handled spoon on the sugar mound. It sinks slightly, then steadies, as if slotting into place. The elders lean closer. One sniffs, another hums. Finally, the eldest of them all, his beard tangled with crumbs, speaks. The sweetness accepts. A wave of relief floods the room. The goblins exhale, some even clap softly. The shorter one beams at you like a proud parent. But before you can bask in the moment, the eldest elder adds, "Now the offering begins." The goblins spring into action, pulling jars and bowls from hidden shelves. Sugar pours like sand in an hourglass, piling higher, forming patterns on the table. Circles, spirals, strange runes. The air grows thick, shimmering, as though the sugar itself is alive. You stand frozen, the twisted spoon gleaming at the center of it all. And deep down, you know this is no ordinary ritual.
You've stumbled into something ancient, something sticky, and there's no backing out now. The air inside the chamber grows dense, sweet enough to sting your nose. Sugar dust drifts like pollen, settling in your hair, on your clothes, even in your eyelashes. Every breath feels like sipping syrup. You resist the urge to cough, not wanting to offend the spoon-clutching audience. The goblins circle the table, their spoons tapping in rhythm. Clink, clink, clink. The sound grows hypnotic, each beat echoing in your chest. The elders hum low notes beneath it, voices weaving a soundscape that's equal parts lullaby and alarm. You're not sure when your vision starts to swim, whether it's the sugar haze, the candlelight, or something more. Patterns rise and fall on the table, swirls of sugar shifting as if alive. One spiral expands until it resembles an eye staring right at you. The shorter goblin sidles close, whispering, "Don't be afraid. Sugar shows truth. Sugar shows ties." Truth about what? You mutter, trying to sound braver than you feel. He grins, teeth flashing. "About you. About us." Before you can protest, one elder dips her spoon into the spiral and flings a pinch of sugar toward you. It sparkles mid-air before settling on your skin. The granules melt instantly, leaving warmth where they touch. Your vision blurs further, and suddenly you're not standing in a candlelit chamber anymore. You're in your own kitchen, but not quite. The walls shimmer, warped as though made of spun sugar. On your counter sits the spiral spoon, glowing faintly. And there at your table are the goblins, only not as you know them. They look taller, steadier, less hunched. Their eyes are softer, their skin less leathery. They're laughing with you like old friends. The vision flickers. The spirals shift again, showing a darker scene. The crooked house collapsing in on itself, beams snapping like brittle candy. The goblins huddle inside, clutching their spoons, looking up at you as if waiting for judgment. You stumble back, gasping. The chamber returns. The chanting stops. The elders watch with unreadable faces. What was that?" you ask, voice shaking. The eldest elder leans forward, spoon tapping once against the table. "The sweetness binds you now. What you saw is choice. Future bends to how you stir." "Choice? I didn't—" The taller goblin interrupts, eyes wide with something like hope. "You did. You placed the spoon. You accepted gift. You part of balance. You want to argue. You want to say you never asked for visions, for collapsing houses, for destinies dictated by desert. But the warmth on your skin lingers, and deep down you know they're right. You've crossed a line you can't uncross." The elders resume their humming, softer now, closing the ritual. Candles gutter. The sugar patterns collapse back into harmless mounds. The air exhales, as though the house itself was holding its breath. The shorter goblin pats your arm. "See? Not so bad. You lived." "Barely," you mutter. Still, when you glance at the twisted spoon on the sugar mound, you feel it pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat in metal. And whether you want to admit it or not, you realize you're tangled in goblin affairs now, knotted tight as spun sugar threads.
When you finally stagger back into your apartment, you smell like burnt sugar and candle smoke. The twisted spoon rests heavy in your hand. You hadn't realized you were still carrying it. You set it on the counter, half expecting it to leap back to the goblins, but it just sits there, pulsing faintly under the kitchen light. You collapse onto your couch. Your mind is a carousel of images, the glowing spirals, the goblins as something almost human, the crooked house crumbling like a sugar cube in water. You rub your face and mutter, "This is ridiculous. I need sleep, or therapy, or both." But sleep doesn't come easy. Every time you close your eyes, the visions replay, sharper, louder. The sound of spoons tapping echoes in your ears. By dawn, you're not sure if you've slept at all. And then, as you stumble toward your coffee maker, you notice something that makes your stomach drop. Your sugar jar is empty. You could have sworn you filled it last week. You peer into the canister, shaking it, nothing but a few stubborn grains clinging to the bottom. A knock at your door confirms your suspicion. You open it to find the shorter goblin, sheepish expression plastered across his face. He holds out a bag of flour. Borrowed sugar, left substitute. You pinch the bridge of your nose. That's not how it works. He grins. Equal trade, both white, both powder. Before you can argue, he adds, "Also, elders pleased. They say you must prepare." "Prepare for what?" you demand. He shrugs. "For choice. Vision showed it. House stands or falls. Depends on how neighbor stirs." You freeze, heart thudding. So the crumbling house wasn't just a nightmare, it was prophecy. The taller goblin appears behind him, carrying a crate filled with jars of sugar. "Will help, but balance tricky. Sweetness must be shared carefully. Too much breaks, too little fails." You stare at the jars, then at the goblins. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" The shorter goblin's grin fades. His tone is now serious. "Be witness, be stirrer. Humans don't see sweetness same way. You can steady it. You can save crooked house." It hits you then. You're not just entangled in their rituals, you're a keystone. Somehow, the spiral spoon made you part of the recipe. You want to refuse. You want to slam the door and go back to your ordinary life of coffee, emails, and manageable weirdness. But when you glance at the spoon on your counter, glowing faintly like a heartbeat, you know it's already decided. Later that night, the noises return, louder this time, more spoons clinking, more chanting, a rumble like thunder rolling under the crooked house. You sit at your kitchen table with the twisted spoon in hand, pulse matching its quiet thrum. And you realize with an uneasy certainty, the next ritual won't just be about sugar. It will be about survival.
The crooked house hums at night now, not just with the familiar clinks and scrapes, but with something deeper, like the walls themselves are vibrating, groaning under a pressure only goblins can sense. You lie in bed, twisted spoon clutched in one hand, staring at the ceiling as the sound seeps through. Eventually, you give up on sleep and wander to the window. Candles glow faintly in their windows, shadows moving busily behind the curtains. You catch glimpses of goblins hauling sacks, stirring cauldrons, dragging planks across the floor. Whatever's coming, they're bracing for it. The next morning, your suspicions are confirmed when the shorter goblin appears on your porch, hair dusted with sugar like frost. He looks jittery, on the edge of panic. "It starts soon. Elders say house already leaning." "Leaning?" you echo. "You mean literally?" He nods, ears twitching, balance weak, sweetness uneven. If not fixed, he makes a collapsing gesture with his hands, followed by a mournful whump noise. You swallow hard. You'd laughed at the vision before, but now, seeing him so deadly serious, you can almost hear the creak of beams giving way. The taller goblin joins him, hauling a battered ledger thicker than a dictionary. He slaps it down on your coffee table.
Pages flutter open, covered with symbols, stains, and what looks like recipes written in a language that bends your eyes if you stare too long. "This is record," he says. "Every sugar borrowed, every sweetness shared, every debt marked. House built on balance of give and take, but lines are wrong, uneven." You peer at the scribbles, resisting the urge to cross yourself. "So what, you're accountants now?" "Not accountants," the shorter goblin corrects, offended. "Stewards. Without record, crooked house falls. With record, crooked house stands." You run a finger down one page. Your name is there, scrawled in looping goblin script. Next to it, little marks that must represent sugar, spoons, odd trinkets they've paid you with. And beside all of that, a crooked spiral, the same as your spoon's handle. "You see," the taller one says, "you tied in. Your balance affect ours. If you hold back, if you give too much, if you stir wrong, the house tilts." You slump into your chair, staring at the spoon resting on your counter. It hums softly, as if agreeing. "So what do I do?" you ask finally. The shorter goblin grins nervously. "You help with final stir, big ritual, sweetness binding. Human hand must steady the bowl." "And if I don't?" Both goblins glance at each other. The taller one says grimly, "Then house falls, crooked house breaks, and maybe more than house." You don't ask what more means. You're not sure you want to know. That night, when the chanting begins again, you don't just hear it, you feel it, vibrating through your bones. The spoon in your hand thrums like a tuning fork. And for the first time, you realize you're not just an observer anymore. You're part of the crooked house's heartbeat.
By the next evening, the crooked house looks worse. You swear the roof line sags more than before, shingles slanting like crooked teeth. The chimney tilts at an angle that makes you want to call the city inspector, though you doubt they'd know what to do with goblin architecture. The goblins usher you inside before you can protest. Their home is hotter than ever, sugar steam fogging the air, floor sticky beneath your shoes. You catch yourself walking carefully, afraid you'll sink into the boards like a fly on caramel. Tonight's preparation looks different. Instead of the usual chaotic clattering, there's order. Rows of bowls line the table, each filled with sugar mixed with odd ingredients, a dash of salt, crushed marbles, a smear of honey, a bent nail you recognize from your coffee table collection. The shorter goblin gestures dramatically. "Final stir begins tomorrow. Tonight we measure. Balance must be exact." He hands you a ladle that looks older than the house itself, its handle twisted like vines, its bowl dented from centuries of use. The metal is cool and heavy in your hands. You hold steady. You stir when called, not before, not after. If you stir wrong... He makes the same collapsing gesture as before, this time adding a hissing sound like sugar burning in a pan. You grimace. No pressure then. The taller goblin pushes the ledger toward you again. This time the pages glow faintly under candlelight. Your name shines brightest, tethered to spirals that twist across the margins. You trace them lightly, and the spoon on your belt hums in response. The elders arrive one by one, each carrying jars wrapped in cloth. They don't speak to you directly, but their black eyes flicker with unreadable judgment. They pour their offerings into the bowls, powders that sparkle, liquids that shimmer, shards of something sharp enough to slice light. The chamber fills with sound, spoons tapping, goblins humming, elders whispering. It's not chaotic anymore. It's a harmony, unsettling but strangely beautiful, like an orchestra of mismatched instruments finding one perfect chord. As the ritual builds, you notice the walls. They aren't solid tonight. The crooked beams shimmer, bend, then straighten, only to sag again. The whole house seems caught in a tug-of-war between collapse and renewal. The shorter goblin catches you staring. His voice drops to a whisper. Tomorrow decides. If sugar holds, house stands strong for another 100 years. If sugar fails, we scatter. And me? You ask before you can stop yourself. He tilts his head. If we scatter, so do you. Spoon bound you. Balance doesn't care if you're human. You grip the ladle tighter, sweat prickling your palms. You want to run, to lock yourself inside your boring, sugarless apartment and pretend none of this is happening. But you can't. The spoon at your side pulses in time with the goblin's chants, anchoring you here in this sticky, surreal nightmare. The ritual winds down near dawn. The bowls remain untouched, waiting. The goblins slump in exhaustion, while the elders vanish silently into shadow. As you stumble back home, sugar clinging to your skin like a second layer, you realize tomorrow isn't just about their crooked house. It's about yours, too.
The day of the final stir arrives heavy with expectation. Even the sky seems to know. Clouds hang low and gray, the air thick enough to chew. You spend the morning pacing your apartment, spoon clutched in your pocket like a lifeline. Every creak of the floorboards makes you flinch. By afternoon, the goblins come for you. They don't knock this time. They simply wait outside your door, solemn as pallbearers. The shorter one gestures for you to follow. The taller carries the ledger pressed against his chest like scripture. Inside the crooked house, the atmosphere is different. No clatter, no chatter, just silence, broken only by the occasional tap of spoon against bowl. The bowls themselves gleam with impossible mixtures, sugar glinting like crushed stars, liquids that ripple with their own light, powders that shift colors when you blink. The elders stand around the central table, their spoons upright like soldiers' spears. Their faces are unreadable masks of shadow and sugar dust wrinkles. The shorter goblin presses the ancient ladle into your hands again. Remember, steady, slow, no hurry, no pause. You nod, throat dry. The eldest elder raises her spoon high. The chamber plunges into silence so sharp you hear your own heartbeat. Then, with a single deliberate motion, she taps her spoon against the sugar mound. The ritual begins. The goblins chant in unison, voices weaving around you like a net. The elders step forward, adding their offerings to the central bowl. Sugar pours, glittering, until the mound looks like a miniature mountain glowing from within. Now, the taller goblin whispers, eyes locked on you. You step forward, ladle shaking in your hands. You plunge it into the mound. It sinks easily, too easily, as if the sugar isn't solid but liquid light. Heat rushes up the handle, searing into your palms. You stir. The sugar moves like water, swirling into spirals that mirror the handle of your twisted spoon. The patterns pulse, expand, then settle into place. With each turn of the ladle, the crooked beams of the house groan, straighten, then sag again. You realize the structure itself is tied to the bowl. Faster now, slower now, every pace dictated by the chants around you. Sweat drips down your back, your arms ache, but you can't stop, not when the spoon hums, not when the goblin's voices rise, not when the elder's eyes bore into you. The spiral tightens, the air vibrates. For a terrifying moment, you feel the floor drop beneath your feet, as if the whole house is tumbling into sugar dust. But then the spoon steadies, the spiral locks, and the world holds its breath. Silence. Then a single crack echoes overhead. You glance up. The crooked beams are straight, perfectly straight. The ceiling no longer droops, the walls no longer sag, the entire house seems to stand taller, prouder, its angles aligning in a way that feels almost wrong, like a child who is always slouched, suddenly standing at attention. The elders lower their spoons. One nods. The sweetness holds. The balance is renewed. Relief floods the goblins. They cheer, slap the table, embrace each other. The shorter one grabs your arm and whoops, "You did it! Neighbor saved crooked house!" But when you look at the spoon in your hand, you notice something unsettling. The spiral has deepened, twisting tighter than before.
and in the center of the spiral, faint but undeniable, glows your own reflection. Bound, the elders had said, bound by sweetness. The crooked house stands, but now so does your tie to it. The crooked house stands straighter than ever, yet the sight unsettles you. Its once slouching silhouette is now sharp, upright, almost militant. You'd gotten used to its drooping beams and sagging roofline like a friendly lopsided grin. Now it looks like a soldier at attention, unnaturally rigid. The goblins, however, are ecstatic. They bustle about the chamber, gathering up bowls, licking stray sugar off their fingers, laughing with relief. The elders vanish without a word, their departure marked only by a faint rustle and the sudden dimming of candlelight. The shorter goblin clasps your arm. Balance restored! 100 years more! 100 years? You repeat, dazed? I just gave your house a century-long sugar warranty? He grins. Exactly. The taller goblin shuts the ledger with a thump. But ledger not closed. Neighbors still tied. Spoon said so. You glance down at the twisted ladle still in your grip. The spiral is deeper than before, glowing faintly as though lit from within. The reflection in its curves looks wrong. Your face stares back at you, but stretched, warped, like it's been stirred too long in the bowl. You shoved the spoon back on the table. Okay, but what does that mean for me? The goblins exchange a look that's far from reassuring. Finally, the taller one says, means crooked house leans on you now. When sweetness wavers, you steady it. When cracks appear, you stir again. Great. I've accidentally become the live-in repairman for a magical sugar shack. Back in your apartment, you collapse on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The air still smells faintly of caramel and smoke. You close your eyes, praying for a normal night's sleep. But normal doesn't come. At 3 in the morning, you jolt awake to find your sugar jar refilled, overflowing in fact, little crystals spilling onto the counter. You didn't put it there. The twisted spoon hums softly from your kitchen table, spinning in place without anyone touching it. You whisper, "Nope, absolutely not. I'm not doing this every night." But the spoon doesn't stop spinning. If anything, it picks up speed, sugar rattling faintly inside the jar like a drum roll. When you step closer, the vision hits. Not as strong as the elder's ritual, but enough to make your knees buckle. You see flashes of the crooked house, its roof bending again, its beams groaning, the goblins huddled beneath. Only this time, they look directly at you, eyes wide, as though begging. You grip the counter until your knuckles ache, gasping, "I already fixed it!" The vision fades, the spoon slows, but the message is clear. The crooked house may stand straighter, but its survival isn't permanent. It depends on you now, whether you like it or not. You slump into a chair, muttering, "I just wanted neighbors who borrowed sugar, that's all." The spoon glints under the kitchen light, smug as ever, as if to say, too late.
Days pass, though you can't quite tell how many. Sleep comes fractured, haunted by sugar visions. Every time you drift off, you're yanked awake by the faint hum of the twisted spoon. Sometimes it sits in the jar, perfectly still. Other times it rotates on its own, a lazy orbit like a planet that refuses to obey gravity. The goblins don't knock anymore. They don't have to. You feel them before they arrive, like a tug in your chest, the same way you know someone's staring at you across a crowded room. One evening, there they are again, silhouettes on your doorstep. The shorter one waves, all teeth. The taller one carries the ledger tucked under his arm. "Neighbor," he says gravely, "ledger updated, balance partial, cracks returned." You want to slam the door. You want to hide under a blanket and binge old sitcoms until your brain goes numb. Instead, you hear yourself sighing. "Show me." They lead you back to the crooked house. This time you don't hesitate. You cross the threshold like someone who knows the drill, spoon already clenched in your fist. Inside, the walls look different. Not worse, just unsettled. Beams twitch slightly, as if shivering. The ceiling drips fine sugar dust, coating your shoulders like dandruff. The elders are absent, only the goblins remain, pacing nervously around the main table. Elders say normal, first stir never enough, house greedy, always hungry. You glare at him. Hungry for sugar? No, says the taller one, eyeing you in a way that makes your stomach sink. Hungry for keeper. Your laugh comes out thin. I didn't sign up to be anyone's snack. He shrugs. House doesn't ask. The spoon hums louder, vibrating in your grip. Without thinking, you slam it against the bowl. The sound rings like a bell, echoing up through the rafters. The beams settle. The walls stop twitching. For a moment, everything is still. The goblins exhale in unison, relieved. But when you lift the spoon, you notice something new. Faint sugar veins creeping along your wrist, shimmering under your skin like threads of light. They pulse in time with the spoon's hum. You hide your arm behind your back. The shorter goblin doesn't notice. He's too busy scooping sugar off the floor into his pockets. But the taller one sees. His eyes linger on your wrist, then flick to your face. Bound tighter, he says softly. House becoming keeper. You manage a shaky grin. Well, at least I'll save on rent. Neither of them laughs. When you return home that night, the sugar jar on your counter is empty again, utterly drained. You know you didn't touch it. You know no one else has been inside. The twisted spoon rests beside it, silent. You stare at it till dawn, pulse ticking louder than any hum. Morning creeps in, though it feels less like a sunrise and more like a bulb flickering in a dingy hallway. Your curtains glow faintly, but the light carries no warmth. You shuffle to the kitchen, eyeing the sugar jar, praying it hasn't pulled another vanishing act. It's empty. Of course it is. The twisted spoon lies across the counter, looking smug in its metallic silence. You prod it with a finger. Nothing. You lift it. Cold, heavier than yesterday. The spiral glows faintly, and you swear you hear whispers curling from its grooves. You mutter, "Great, haunted cutlery, just what I needed." There's a knock. Not a polite knock either, a sharp, frantic rapping that rattles the hinges. When you open the door, the shorter goblin stumbles inside, sugar dust clinging to his hair like snow. His eyes are wide, panicked. Neighbor, trouble, house tearing itself again. Before you can protest, the taller one appears behind him, face grim. He holds the ledger open, pages trembling as if written words are trying to crawl free. Ledger says storm coming, too soon, too strong, need neighbors stir. You clutch the spoon tighter. I just did the big ritual. I'm not a bottomless sugar battery. The taller goblin shakes his head. Not sugar, you, house hungry for keeper's essence. Your stomach drops. Define essence. They don't answer. They just rush you toward the crooked house. When you arrive, it's worse than you imagined. The beams bend inward, ribs collapsing toward the center. Sugar pours from cracks in the ceiling, cascading in glittering waterfalls. The floor heaves like a ship on rough seas. The goblins scream, scurrying to hold up collapsing shelves and drag bowls out of harm's way. You stand frozen at the threshold, spoon humming so violently it nearly leaps from your hand. The taller goblin yells, "Stir now, before sweetness devours itself!" You stagger to the table, thrust the spoon into the central bowl, and stir with all the strength you have left. The sugar moves sluggishly this time, resisting, clumping like wet sand. The spiral fights against you, trying to reverse direction. The house groans louder. The ceiling splits, showering you in shards of hardened caramel. Your arm burns, sugar veins spreading farther under your skin, twining up toward your elbow. The heat is unbearable, like liquid fire threading through your blood. You grit your teeth, whispering, "Just stay together." With a final wrench, the spiral snaps into place. The house shudders, then stills. The cracks seal. The sugar flows back upward, as though gravity suddenly remembered its job. Silence. You collapse against the table, gasping. Your arm glows faintly, the veins pulsing like living sugar roots. The shorter goblin kneels beside you, face pale.
Neighbor gave too much. The taller one shuts the ledger, voice low. Balance unstable. House will want again, soon. You glance at your arm, trembling. The veins don't fade. They've become part of you now, permanent, as bone. You whisper, I'm not just keeping the house together. It's keeping me apart. The spoon hums in agreement.
You don't remember how you got home. One moment, you're in the crooked house, veins glowing like molten sugar, the goblins whispering about imbalance. The next, you're slumped on your couch, spoon still in hand, arm throbbing with a pulse that no longer feels entirely yours. The sugar jar on your counter is full again. Too full. Crystals spill over the rim, scattering across the tiles like broken glass. You don't touch it. You can't. The spoon hums softly in your lap, as if it knows what comes next. By evening, there's another knock at your door, this one hesitant, almost apologetic. You open it to find the taller goblin alone. His usual stiffness is gone. His shoulders sag as though weighed down by more than the ledger he clutches. Neighbor, he says quietly, ledger won't close. House wants final binding, wants permanent keeper. Your throat tightens. You mean it wants me to move in? He shakes his head. Not move, merge. The word hangs between you, sticky, a syrup. You laugh, a thin, brittle sound. Yeah, no thanks. I didn't sign up for house cosplay. But he doesn't smile. His eyes flick to your glowing veins, then back to your face. Already happening. House already in you. Final stir, only choice. Bind fully or unravel. Unravel. You don't ask what that means. You don't want to know. That night, sleep refuses to come. Every creak in your apartment sounds like the crooked house calling. Every flicker of streetlight resembles sugar dust falling. When you finally close your eyes, you dream of beams splitting, floors dissolving, goblins clinging to collapsing walls, always looking at you, always waiting for your spoon. You wake drenched in sweat, spoon vibrating against your chest where you'd fallen asleep clutching it. The decision gnaws at you. If you refuse, the crooked house crumbles. The goblins vanish. Maybe you survive, maybe not. If you accept, you're bound forever, flesh and sugar indistinguishable, a walking extension of beams and bowls. You stare at the jar on your counter, overflowing once more. Sugar dust floats in the air, catching the light like drifting pollen. You inhale, and it tastes like inevitability. The spoon hums louder, urgent now, calling you. You realize the crooked house isn't next door anymore. It's inside you.
The night of the final binding arrives without invitation. You're pacing your apartment when the walls ripple, yes, ripple, as though painted on sugar film stretched too thin. The ceiling bows, the floor tilts, and when you open your door, there's no hallway, no outside, just the crooked house, waiting. The goblins stand by the threshold, solemn. The shorter one fidgets with his hands, sugar crystals flaking from his nails. The taller one cradles the ledger, though its pages are blank now, words burned away. He meets your gaze. Time. The spoon pulses in your palm like a heartbeat, your heartbeat. Inside, the crooked house groans, beams bending like ribs under strain. The air tastes thick, saccharine, suffocating.
The bowls on the table brim with impossible mixtures, liquid sugar that glows, powders that whisper, shards that float weightless. The elders are absent. This time, it's only you, the goblins, and the house itself. You stagger to the central bowl. The spoon hums, spiral glowing like molten glass. You plunge it into the mound, and the world shatters. Visions consume you. Streets outside dissolving into sugar dust. Sky sagging like spun candy. Stars dripping syrup. The crooked house at the center, a heart pumping sweetness through veins that spread across the city, the world, into you. Your body burns. Sugar veins climb higher, wrapping your chest, neck, face. You drop to your knees, stirring wildly, the spiral pulling faster, faster until you can't tell if it's your hand or the spoon guiding the motion. The house straightens fully. Its beams lock into perfect symmetry. Walls no longer sag, they shine. The crookedness is gone. The house is whole. And you realize you're no longer holding the spoon. You are the spoon. Twisted metal, endless spiral, humming with sweetness. Your reflection stares back at you from every curve, warped and infinite. The goblins kneel, pressing their foreheads to the floor. Keeper, they whisper. You want to scream, but the sound comes out as a soft, endless hum, the same one that's haunted you since the beginning. It vibrates through the walls, the floors, the bowls, through them, through everything. The crooked house is no longer next door. It is you, and you are it, bound by sweetness, forever. But the story softens now, as all stories must. The sugar hum that once burned your veins settles into a steady, quiet thrum, like a cat purring against your ribs. The crooked house stands tall, beams straight, windows glowing faintly with the warmth of something ancient and satisfied. The goblins move calmly through the rooms, their footsteps muffled on sugared floors. They don't shout, don't clamor. They live in balance now, because you hold the balance for them. You feel their movements the way you feel your own breath, light, steady, part of you, but not overwhelming. The air is gentler here. The sharp edge is rounded. The sweetness no longer cloying, but soothing, like a spoonful of honey stirred into warm tea. The visions fade too, not vanishing, but dimming, the way street lamps glow softer, just before dawn. You drift in that twilight space, no longer resisting, no longer pulled apart. You've become the spiral, and the spiral holds everything together. There's no fear here, only stillness, only the quiet truth that things don't always need to straighten completely to be whole. Your reflection, once warped and unsettling, now gazes back with a sleepy calm. You see yourself in the metal, but softer, eyes half closed, content. The hum wraps around you like a blanket, steady and low, guiding you deeper into rest. Outside, the night settles. The crooked house glows faintly under the stars, not crooked, not straight, simply standing, waiting, watching, humming softly into the quiet world. And you drift with it, slowly, gently, spiraling down into sleep.